Welcome to this week's edition of Rugby Unfiltered. I'm your host, Jan de Koning, and with me, as always, my fellow host, Eugene Eloff. Loffie, welcome.
Hello, thanks, Sean. And we're going into the final stretch of a few competitions. So, yeah, it's interesting times, ne?
Yes, Eugene. We start with the European finals this week. On Friday night is the Challenge Cup final, and then on Saturday is the Champions Cup final. And yeah, it's an interesting weekend, but there's other big South African developments. I mean, obviously, three of the South African teams are in the URC playoffs the following weekend, when the URC playoffs starts the following weekend. And obviously, we got the SA Cup, and we got some lots to talk about. But I think let's start with the URC, which is where our focus is, and the fact that we've got three South African teams in the playoffs for the first time.
Yes, Jan, that's exciting, eh? And it's exciting, and I know there's a lot of disappointment with the Lions and the Stormers this weekend. But in a quick review, if I take the Lions game, I think if they're in their review, I'm sure they've noticed a few things. I think what was detrimental to them, Jan, is that they didn't finish. They were poor in their finishing, which is usually the other way around. And then, again, their game plan, especially when they were playing against 13, two backs were off of the opponents. They kept on with the kicking game. So they should have moved that ball. They would have walked across the line. And they were still in the game pretty much to the end. I think what was the pivotal change in the game was when they missed defense opportunity when Casey scored just before halftime. I think that put pressure on them. And then after that, they were under pressure and some poor decision-making in the game per se. But you know what? It's not a bad thing before you're going into playoffs. And I know, again, it's not what coaches and people want to hear. Let's take the positive out of that. This is the first time they qualify for URC. So that's a great, great achievement. And they automatically qualify for the Champions Cup next year. So within that, I think they will have to address a few things. They will need to have a great game plan going into the game. And I still back them that they can be the surprise. And with that, I think if you look at as we also mentioned last week, the Bulls are still consistent. And I think the Bulls are in a very, very strong and good position currently. Just not take their foot off the pedal. The Sharks are reviving themselves. They're playing for pride and putting up big scores. But if you look at the Stormers, I think Dobbo, you can also see, he's not taking this loss good. He takes it very personal, which coaches do. It is tough because you put everything in a week in your coaching and then it just doesn't come off. To me, they were in a position to put pressure on their opponents because they were on their goal line the whole time. But they didn't finish, they didn't score. And that brought Cardiff back into the game. And then bad discipline, we talked about it previously. I think some defensive lapses, which I found they were a little bit slow on the breakdown. And in hindsight, also the losing of Dion, and one swallow doesn't make a summer. But his captaincy, I lack some leadership on the field. But they're there. It sounds like we're crunching them. No, as from a coach's point of view, those are things that you battle with. But I'm very much supporting all the South African teams this weekend, Jan.
Yeah, Eugene, we'll get back to the Lions now because we've got a very special gift. As they would say in Afrikaans, die groot leeu is hierdie week saam met ons. But we'll get back to that in a second. I think let's quickly run through next week's quarterfinals. I mean, we start on the Friday night with Glasgow, top of the table, hosting Connacht. And Glasgow, with Franco Smith, I mean, we've got 6 South African coaches, believe it or not. Of the 8 teams, 6 are being coached or partially coached by South Africans. So we got Glasgow, which is Franco Smith, hosting Connacht, which is going to be an interesting game. I mean, obviously, my money would be on Glasgow. Then we got Johan Ackermann's Bulls hosting Munster on Saturday in an early game. And it's going to be very interesting because the winner of those 2 matches will play each other in the semi-finals. So you would expect Bulls and Glasgow to go through. And then on the other side of the draw, you've got Leinster hosting the Lions, which, I mean, we all know the Lions will be underdogs, which is sometimes good for a South African team. And I think the Lions would have taken some lessons, and we'll get back to that. Let's get back to the Lions just now. But then we finish the weekend with the Stormers against Cardiff. And I think the Stormers have got a score to settle. Playing Cardiff on a 4G pitch in a Friday night is not the most. The Stormers don't like Friday nights to start with, and they prefer the grass of Cape Town and by that I mean the kikuyu grass, not the other type that you smoke. So, so yeah, we finish with that. But Eugene, we've got a very good friend of yours and a person you work closely with, Kevin de Klerk, who's going to tell us a bit more about the Lions when they play Leinster and what we can expect.
Yes, Jan, I've got the utmost respect. And before you play the clip, I'd like to share a story. So when I started coaching at the Lions in 1998, it felt to me like a few of the older players, I don't think Doc Late excluded them, but they were not included. And I thought that I'm gonna change that. So what I did is I made a selection committee of Richard Prentice, Kevin de Klerk, Sid Nomus, Hugh Bladen. So I took a few old players and made them, and it was just fantastic how they were part of that success of that junior team, and then the rest was history. Unfortunately, me and Kevin always stayed friends. I've got so much respect for him as a human being, as an ex-Springbok, and his leadership skills. And when I left the Lions, he became the president. And I mean, the rest is very much history, the success in his era. So, yeah, what a good man. He's a gentle giant with such a small, good heart.
You say he's a gentle giant. He's that off the field. Believe me, Kevin was a hard man on the field. I saw enough games. So there's a few people, a certain lock from Eastern Province that can attest to the fact that Kevin doesn't take no nonsense. You certainly leave his family alone. You say anything about his family, you might regret it. So I think maybe that's a good story to start with. And let's listen to what I chatted to Kevin, and let's listen to what he had to say about the Lions and their trip to Dublin next week. Kevin, welcome to Rugby Unfiltered. It's such a pleasure having you. We've been trying for a while, and I know you're a busy man, a retired busy man, and I know you recently had a trip down to the Karoo, which you enjoyed or did not enjoy, but really nice to have you on the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you, Jan, and just an honor to love you for me on the other end. I've watched quite a few of your programs, very interesting, very informative, Jan, and yeah, it's going to be a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, Lofi describes you as one of the best selectors he ever had, which suggests that you know something about rugby.
I think, Jan, at that stage, after about 40 years experience with the Lions over the years, I'd had to pick up some sort of experience somewhere along that line. Yeah, and I look at Johan van Wijngaard, I think Jannie Breed was part of it as well. Sid Nomus, and yeah, it was such a lovely time with Lofi there. Lofi was such a wonderful personality, and he led that scenario pretty well. I mean, as things go today, your coach makes the call on the players, which is quite right.
Yeah,
I do believe that. But no, thanks for that compliment. Yeah.
Kevin, if we can move on to the Lions itself. So the first time since the URC started in 21-22, the Lions are in the playoffs, and they've had some narrow misses. I mean, they've had 1 year they lost by 1 point. It was a bonus point that they didn't get, that they were supposed to get in the last round. And then there was another thing about points difference. They had the same points as the 8th team, but their points difference wasn't good enough. So they've been there, and then they've also had some bad years. But it must be a really nice feeling as a former Lions president, as a former Transvaal player. I mean, in those days they were only known as Transvaal, and as a Springbok, to see your old union doing so well.
Without a doubt, all in all, I've had about 52 years with the Lions, and that tells you my closeness to the union, and my wonderful experience of having represented this union over those many years. And yes, I watch this Lions side virtually every game that I possibly can. I go to the park as well, and they graciously invite me there very often. And my heart has been bleeding a bit for them. Originally, we in my era as the privileged position of being president of the Lions, we built a super core side, that went on to play in 3 super competition finals won 2 Currie Cups in my tenure of those years. And it was important for me to establish a core of strong representation amongst your forwards and your backs, to be able to compete at that sort of level. Unfortunately, not because I left, and when I left, a lot of players moved on to overseas clubs, some retired, and we actually lost our core of very, very senior established players. I think Rudolph and Cash and Altman set out then to rebuild a new side, engaged a lot of new young players. You know, they've been developing from that time onwards, you know, Jan, I watched them improve year after year after year, you know, and it's taken a bit of time, but you don't establish a core of sound players to compete at that level overnight. It does take time, and we have to realize that. You know, what I see coming to the fore is that core has developed so well, and very similarly to our side of that, my fortunate era, was that they appear to be becoming a very happy team, a very united team, Jan, you know, guys that are playing for one another, slapping on the backs and on the heads, and very, very supportive of one another. And, you know, a happy team comes from a happy management and a sound management, which is most important, Jan. I think we see that all too often in many unions where the management is not sound, and there's ructions in the boardroom, and it plays itself out on the field, there's no doubt. So I think when the stage is set for the Lions to become a super team going forward, obviously we'd like them to take this one on Saturday coming up. But all the ingredients are there, Jan. We have some wonderful players that have now picked up a lot of experience.
Yeah. Given the Lions obviously decided to stay in Dublin, they didn't come home for the 2 weeks. So this week is the Champions Cup final, and then Leinster plays in against Bordeaux in France, and then Leinster's got to travel back to Dublin, and the Lions are already in Dublin preparing, so they've got extra time to prepare in Dublin. Do you think that will have an impact when Leinster comes back from such a big game, having to play a quarterfinal against the Lions in Dublin?
I would say so, Jan. There's no doubt, and I think, you know, the benefit of us not having had to travel in and out is also going to be a factor. You know, there's such a thing as jet lag, and irrespective of only being an 8 or 9 hour flight, it's still going to affect you. So for them being there, having the opportunity then to do that bit more extra work in those conditions is certainly going to be beneficial for us. I've no doubt about that. You know, there's some speculation about, you know, the toughness of the game before a final affecting you. You know, you should rather take it easy. I've actually seen the reverse very often. You know, when you've had a tough lead up, you eventually are ready for a tough final as well. You know, so but I think everything's pointing positively towards us, and I think it's going to be a pretty close encounter. And I'm hoping we're going to pull this one off.
Yeah, the Lions in their last 2 rounds played 2 Irish teams, so they're familiar with the Irish way. I know that that league game against Leinster, the Lions weren't necessarily playing the right tactics, but they would have learned. They would have learned from both games exactly what works and what doesn't work in Dublin or what works in Ireland.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I think the weather conditions play a big role. I believe it can get proper cold out there in Dublin. So, but we've now acclimatized for a week or 2 there. That's going to help us. I think what I've always found about the Irish, Jan, is that, you know, they're always up for that fight. There's no doubt about that. And you always look at the British Lions side I played in 74 and in 80. They were always a massive factor. Willie John McBride, Fergus Statry, then in 80, 81, those 2 tests against the Irish. And you must always, I think what the teachers, having played against them, is that invariably you know you're in for a very tough encounter, no matter what. They're going to come at you for 80 minutes. It's going to be a massive arm wrestle. But, you know, I think we could stand up to this, you know. But all-round conditions, I think, is probably the closest we can come to going to the final this time around.
Yeah. The other challenge, obviously, is that the Lions, and you mentioned that they had up and down years, and then the management managed to settle it down and things. But when you, even in your time, I mean, the Lions got kicked out of Super Rugby and then they got back in and they started rebuilding during that period. I think it was, with Johan Ackerman and them. Uh, so now that they've started rebuilding, how do you hold on to those? And that is the challenge you mentioned. How do you hold on to those players? Do you not lose these core players? Because as soon as they start reaching Springbok level, so you've now seen a lot of them called up for the Springbok alignment camp. That means, other people is going to start noticing them. How do you hold on to them?
I suppose from a management point of view, it can be a difficult one. Generally, I think you are happy with your fellow teammates where you play. You would very unnecessarily want to move. Unfortunately, the big pull today's rugby is the financial aspect and what sort of monies they offer to move. And, I think Altman's a very wise guy in terms of controlling his finances and won't possibly extend himself beyond, let's say, the capabilities of the Lions purse. So that'll be a big factor, I suppose, Jan. But, one must never dismiss that. The grass is not always greener on the other side. There's no two ways about that. Although Joburg is not the most comfortable place to be operating from, that mere fact is that, everybody is with you, everybody is sort of your brother in arms. And I'm starting to do so well. It's going to depend very much on how a coach can continue to motivate them, to stick around, to encourage them, to make them see what sort of future they're going to have in this union that has so much potential for them with their fellow players, Jan. And then obviously the money factor might undercut all of those aspects. But, it goes to the soundness of management. I've always said, I in running the Lions at the time, trying to convey the right sort of attitude towards my fellow players, that if they must have the confidence in me as the leader of the union at that stage, that I was going nowhere. When they threw us out of that super competition, I clearly said to them, this is not going to scare us. We're going to hang in. We're going to show you guys this is not legal as far as I was concerned at the time. It was a very politically motivated thing. Excuse me, but we hung in there. And I think that the players, sometimes we underestimate their depth of knowledge and understanding of what's going on in boardroom and general running of the union. And if you can give them that confidence that things are stable, that you're competitive on the market insofar as salaries are concerned, that there's no hanky-panky going on behind the scenes, you get promised and you don't get delivered. I think it's important to deliver, number one, what your contractual obligations are, and that they remain competitive, and honesty for me has always been the biggest factor in maintaining my relationship with my players. And I, as the president of the union, was in that change room every match, before and after games, and I was with them as much as I possibly could be. My office, in fact, was an open door to them whenever they needed to come and speak to me. Unfortunately, at the right time in the John Mitchell era, they did that, and they came and presented me with a whole lot of letters that they'd written about that, and we took what necessary action we needed to take. But coming back to the confidence in your leaders at the union is paramount for the players.
Yeah. It brings me to the other question. We've got this thing about everybody knows that Joburg is a financial hub of South Africa, even in Africa. I mean, there's so much money in Joburg. So people keep asking, but why can't the Lions use this money? Why is that money not going to... What is the challenge of getting all that money that's sitting in the financial status of Johannesburg, or the amount of money that's available? How does that not flow through to the union? Or what is the challenges there?
I think the challenges are one of the misconception about the excuse me, the amount of money that's available to rugby and Super Rugby, and it's not nearly as much as people think it is. I think if you take the Ellis Park Stadium itself, to open up for a game can involve a couple of 100,000 rand just to open the doors, for example. And the location is sometimes coming to and from is not what the people would like. Generally, I think the management of the union do marvelous work around the stadium in securing it and securing parking and so forth. But you need to have that gate also to help give your purse a bit of a boost. I think we were lucky in those days, in that fortunate time in 2011 and onwards, that we had crowds of about 40, 50,000 rand, 50,000 at a game, which sincerely did hope. The purse that's being divided, one must remember, doesn't necessarily come from the gate anymore. It's coming from sponsors, which are also under pressure, like everybody is in the economy. There's just not that money available. And once again, you will have one or two big benefactors like Jan Rupert or Patrice Motsepe or the Natal, the Sharks benefactor. But, those aren't available to every union at the same sort of level or funding that they make available. They would also watch what they would invest, I suppose, Jan. So misconception about the great amount of money that's available, it's not. And, you've got to soberly manage. It doesn't help you go and buy a whole host of unbelievable stars and you can't keep them. You can keep them for a year or two and you bankrupt your union. I think that's we have sound financial management at the Lions, and I think certainly a misconception about the great amount of money that's available. It's not yet.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask, and we know the conditions. I mean, you touched on it now as well about, first of all, the area, and you can put as much security as you like around the stadium. But once you go outside that kilometer radius, that's where the challenges lie. The idea of moving to another stadium, a safer stadium, maybe out on the West Rand or somewhere in Midrand, or find another stadium that is more suited and maybe smaller. I know for internationals you do need a 62,000 seater, but for a smaller venue for your regular games, was that ever an option, and why not?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I think it can be contemplated. You don't really like to move away from your base as a home team of the Lions of Ellis Park. If I could just go back to my day when I was at Diggers, I'd already retired, and Diggers were asked to move by the municipality because they wanted those grounds. And then they moved to Kibler Park and later on to Randburg. Diggers lost their identity completely. Your supporter base, where does it come from? You've got the East Rand, you've got the West Rand, and a certain amount to the south, and limited, I suppose, from the north. So where would one relocate that? That could be a cost-saving exercise. It's not necessarily going to draw more spectators there, Jan, but it could be a cost-saving exercise, and I don't know how the fans would take that. It would be interesting to hear if they would accept that. But at this stage, we're looking at about 3,000 to 5,000, 10,000 spectators as opposed to previous tallies of 40, 50,000. It's a big difference.
Yeah, I was always, and this is just my opinion, I was always thinking of, you can take it to like the RAU Stadium or the Joburg University. I mean, they can host 8,000 to 10,000 people. So if you then got a 5,000 or a 6,000, 7,000 number of spectators, it's a full stadium with an enormous atmosphere. Or maybe you take it to another. I know Alberton, out your way. I know Alberton's got a decent stadium. So there must be stadiums where you can play some of your matches and create a better atmosphere.
I agree with that, Jan, and I think they'll probably investigate that in the road going forward. I think you have some challenges around change room facilities. I think general access wouldn't be too bad because, Ellis Park has got some first-class facilities so far as their change rooms and after-match functions and so forth, and press conferencing. So I suppose that'll have to be jacked up. But it's something I suppose they can certainly look at going forward. Once again, once the Lions side starts to perform, it becomes, the winning side that we know and believe that they can be. That could be another picture. People could come. I don't think much has changed insofar as the area is concerned from my day when I was fortunate to be there. And the people were coming. They were following a winning side. I say high tide raises all boats, Everybody wants to see a winning side.
Yeah. Well, maybe a win in Leinster is just what the Lions, next week, a win in Leinster in Dublin is just what the Lions need to draw back 10 or 20,000 more people to the stadium.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think this could be a big Rubicon for us. We cross this Dublin, and I believe we can win this competition. I even believe now we can win this competition. We got everything going for us here, Jan. Really a great back of forwards, very, very great defense on behalf of the side, good back line. I, for one, think that Chris Smith has made a big difference to our side. We've always been there or thereabouts, but we lacked a bit of uniformity in our back line for me, and a bit of direction. Chris Smith has come and delivered that. Chris has been accurate with his kicking to poles, kicking to the line, and he's getting his back line right very, very smartly. A big factor, and he's done remarkably well there. So we got the goods to do it, Jan.
Kevin, thank you. As a last one, you're the captain of the Lions in Dublin next Saturday. Not this coming Saturday, next Saturday, the 30th. You're the captain. You're about to lead your team out onto the Viva Stadium or Lansdowne Road, as it was called. What is your last words to the team?
Well, boys, there's 80 minutes of very, very hard work ahead for a lifetime of memories.
There we go. For a lifetime of memories. Kevin, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And we hope to have you back on Rugby Unfiltered soon.
Lovely short chatting to you in regards to Norfolk, Jan. All the best.
And we mustn't forget, Jan, that it's the final of the SA Cup. And if I recall it right, it's the same as last year. Griquas playing the Pumas. They're playing in Kimberley.
Yeah. Except this year's in Kimberley. Last year it was in Nelspruit.
Yes, that's the only difference. They're playing in Kimberley. And both teams are playing good rugby. Both teams are very equally matched. Although if you look on paper and the results of the season, most probably Griquas have got a bit of an edge. But they will not be on the rest on their laurels. I know Peter Berg is a good coach. Jimmy is just as good. So I think that's going to be a cracker of a game. And I don't think it's going to be a big scoring game. I think it's going to be very physical and very tactical. I'm looking forward to that. And may the best team win.
Eugene, I agree with you 100%. Look, I mean, they played each other. The only game in the SA Cup that the Pumas have lost was against Griquas. They lost by 10 points, 24-34. And then obviously the Pumas had a draw down the line, but that was because they started playing and lightning came, and the game against Griquas in Bloemfontein, against the Cheetahs in Bloemfontein got called off before halftime. So there was they couldn't get a result. So the Cheetahs and the Pumas shared points. But other than that, the only loss that the Pumas suffered was against Griquas, and it was a brutal game, and it's going to be a brutal game on Saturday. And yeah, you're right. It's something to look forward to. Two very good coaches. I mean, Peter Berg is probably the more placid of the two coaches, more reserved of the two coaches, whereas Jimmy is a super motivator and a guy who knows how to work up a team and work his team into a frenzy, especially for a final. And let's not forget that the last time these two teams played in a final in Kimberley, the Pumas beat Griquas to win the Currie Cup in 2022.
Yeah, you've said it. They two different characters. Peter, I have the privilege of knowing both of them very well. Peter worked with me at Boland, and he's very creative in his thinking. He's out of the box. Jimmy is more conservative, and he can sing Sweet Caroline. But he's such a character, and that's why I think in both the instances the players love to play for their coaches, and I think that is the important thing, that the team respects and loves their coach, and they play for him. So it's going to be a cracker, Jan. But we cannot go off yet. We need to finish with schools rugby, because this weekend just passed with big upsets, and I'm just maybe going to mention the big upsets. The biggest one was from my local town, and I'm not punting any schools above others, but I think you have to give credit to Boys Eye that stopped Stellenberg. They just didn't stop them. They outplayed them. So well done to the coaching team that did their homework very well. Stellenberg couldn't get momentum in the game, and that was the big upset. The other upset was, of course, Office beating Grade 28-21 in Pretoria. And if you look at the results of the day, a lot of the teams of Grey got hiding on the day. So I don't know that we talked about it quickly, some red lights in Bloemfontein. And then, of course, my team, Gim, beating Bishops 66-14. and Paul Roos beating Rondebosch 41-70, big scores. But I would like to stop with the Oakdale game, which is also a local derby. They played against Etaniqua and won the game 27-21. But I would like to I just want to take this moment and share my condolences to a friend of mine, a very good friend, who passed last week, who was a teacher at Oakdale, Saki Schreiber. And the kids loved him. All the players that I coached at the junior box and at the lines loved him. And I'm thinking of his family and everyone. And it's such a great thing that Oakdale did on the field, just also to commemorate his life. And I can just smile because I think him and Pedri are sitting together looking down and most probably having a beer and watching schools rugby. So yeah, we're thinking of you, and Oakdale, good on that one as well.
Yeah, Eugene, also, while we're on the subject, this week, the great Scott Hastings passed away as well from cancer. It's not a good week, but I mean, we've seen this quite happen. I mean, when it happens, we just got to pause for a minute and just remember how fortunate and blessed we are that we're still alive and we can still sit and talk rugby, and other people are mourning. So yes, as you say, our condolences to the families and the friends of these people that have passed. Eugene, I want to stop. You mentioned something about Grey and Bloemfontein, or something. It's a miss in Bloemfontein. I know you called it an upset, but Office winning at home against Grey, to me, is not a major surprise given the results in Bloemfontein this season. Not just season. I think Grey has been for a year or two now. They haven't had that aura. It's a bit like the All Blacks. They've dominated for so long that everybody just expects them to continue dominating for so long. But they haven't got that aura that they used to have. And more teams are even going to Bloemfontein and winning. And, if they travel, then they struggle, So, I think maybe sometimes a momentum shift, something happens in the dynamics at the school. We're not privy to the administration of the school, but there's definitely not that brotherhood, or you don't see it in the results or on the field, that absolute brotherhood for each other. So I'm not sure exactly what's wrong in Bloemfontein.
Jan, we hope that it's just a normal cycle of, the circle. You're on top and you're at the bottom. The circle turns around because they're important, integral part of schools rugby in our country. And maybe at that note, it'll be good to have some discussions on schools rugby in South Africa. I think we've wanted to do that and also talk about mental health and that sort of stuff. But we've got a big weekend ahead and looking forward to some results.
Eugene, we're definitely going to talk schools rugby. We're just trying to find the right person. And once we can find a time gap, it's not that there's a shortage of people who want to talk. We just got to find the right time. People just don't always have the time, but we will do it. And maybe next week, if things fall into place, we definitely talk about schools rugby, the school rugby setup in South Africa, and mental health in general. Let's see if we can find the right person with the right time. From myself, Jan de Koning.
And Loffie Geloff, have a great weekend of sport. And may South African teams make us proud, all of them.
Till next week. Cheers.